Hi, it's Jeff with Cribl. In this video, we're joining Randy Corelli as he talks through how to configure and use a simple SOCKS and HTTP proxy, including deploying an example proxy. Customers with restrictive network policies will see how to use proxies with the Cribl Cloud environment. And a bonus use case is explored on how to use Cribl Workers as the proxies for Edge agents. Let's join Randy as he gives an office hour style walkthrough and demonstration.
Good day, everyone. In this video, I'm going to walk through how to set up the system proxy and SOCKS proxy environment variables to allow a stream worker node or even an edge node to connect through a proxy in order to reach the cloud leader. So the use case is that your edge node or your worker node is in a restrictive environment where it doesn't have direct access to the required ports, mainly port 4200 with a TCP kind of raw socket stream, as well as port 443 or 4200 on the HTTP, HTTPS kind of web streams. So in this case, we're just going to use a simple VM as our proxy in between. And I'm also just going to set up a very simple SOCKS proxy and a very simple web proxy, just to highlight the ease of that setup in certain environments or when maybe a proxy isn't already available. Of course, there are many other applications or devices that could be used to operate as a proxy. So this is only one example, really just to show kind of how it's done end-to-end, how this could work. So for the relevant doc links here, we see the ports page. We also get the system proxy page under securing your environment here in the docs. And this gives us our environment variables that we'd need to set and some other guidance. The SOCKS proxy for that leader, kind of that raw TCP connection, and that's that Cribl dist worker proxy environment variable. And I'm also going to be using systemd to manage my worker service. So I'll be using the persisting overrides and wanted to highlight this docs page as well. As mentioned, I will be setting up a very basic SOCKS 5 proxy, which literally is just this one command. In here, you can just adjust that port if you don't want to use the standard 1080. In my case, I'm going to use port 9065. So you do have some flexibility there. The other one for the web proxy side, I found Tinyproxy. I really liked this one because it was very lightweight and simple to set up, but it does have some powerful features. One of them being able to configure which interface it's listening on and going to send data out of, which can be handy if you need to separate that from your existing traffic. Perhaps in the one use case was using the worker nodes as a proxy for edge nodes to be able to reach the cloud leader. And in that case, the worker nodes are able, to get through the firewalls because there's not that many of them. But punching that many holes for in the firewall for all the different edge nodes would become an issue. So for a little bit maybe of network resourcing, having a separate interface may be something that's possible, and this works well for that. Being able to send its logs over syslog, very nice for being able to monitor for any issues or errors. If you send those syslogs kind of through Cribl and over to your system of analysis, it can also monitor this service. I really liked this upstream feature. So in my example of using a worker node as a proxy for an edge node, the worker node itself might need to go through a proxy to reach the cloud, in which case your edge node would have to go into the Tinyproxy that you're going to set up on the worker node, but then also need to forward that traffic up through the second level web proxy, just like the worker would be using to connect to the cloud. So that upstream capability here is what can allow you to connect to an upstream proxy as part of that chain. It's super useful. And as well as some allowed deny list and some basic auth, just for some basic security in there as well. So for a simple little program, this does have a lot of features. So that's why I've chosen to use that for my demo here today. Looking now here at my worker, we can see that in my worker list, I don't have any in my default hybrid group, only my cloud managed, Cribl managed items. So taking a look over here at our servers, one of them is my basic kind of proxy server. The other one is my worker node. And using a simple ncat command, we can show that on my worker, it doesn't have direct access to port 4200, while this one up here does. And we can do that very same thing with port 443. And we see here this connection did time out as expected. And that always gets me. Check here for port 443 as well. And likewise here, this one will connect very quickly. So here we see both of these failed on our worker node. Both were successful on our to-be proxy server. Now, before we can configure the environment variables for our worker to connect through the proxy, we first need to have a proxy. So the first one we're going to look at here is just that SOCKS proxy. And so I've prepared that command with my port 9065. And that's it. We can just run this. And now it will be available. We can kind of confirm that with a quick ps-ef to look at the processes. And we see here that that is in fact running. And this here is its process ID. Likewise, we can now confirm that our worker node is able to connect on port 4200. But of course, we're going to have to tell it the proxy settings to use. So we just changed that first command to have this -proxy and proxy type. Yours may be a little bit different if you have a different ncat version. But here we're just pointing it to our proxy VM and port and telling it it's a SOCKS 5 type. And now we see very quickly it was able to connect to the proxy and that the connection to the next level was successful as we would expect. So before we install the web proxy and go through that setup, I just wanted to start the service and kind of show here what happens when you only have the connectivity for that TCP 4200 and you don't have that additional HTTP or HTTPS web access. So the first part would be just telling our service that we'd like to use the proxy. So here in the override file, you want to make sure you have this service entry here at the top, and then this kind of environment equals, and then the variable name, in this case, Cribl dist worker proxy. And then we see it is a SOCKS 5 type, and then our address and port that we're expecting to use. So we can just save that, and now we can start that service. And we can also tail the logs. And we can see here that it was able to connect to our cloud leader. And in my case as well, I also have a pending commit for it to deploy. And so we see this leader triggered a configure message. And right now it's trying to download that bundle. And because we don't yet have any web access, it won't be able to reach this bundle-main amazonaws.com URL. But in the meantime, here in my UI, we should now at least see the node show up. And this is pretty much what you could expect if you didn't have a web proxy available and only had the SOCKS side, that it will be able to reach and confirm its existence with the leader. And we see here our default hybrid, but the config version will just stay spinning. It won't be able to receive new config updates as you do a commit and deploy in that worker group. So we're going to give this a few minutes here to time out, and then we'll see the error message that we see when it tries to download this bundle and fails. In the meantime, on the other system, we're going to go ahead and install the Tinyproxy and get that one configured. So it's just sudo yum install Tinyproxy. If you don't already have the epel-release repository installed, then you would also want to run the epel-release as an install command in order to get that repo. And then once it's available, just do the same install command here for the Tinyproxy. So that was just that easy, and we can see here it was nice and small. It's the 139K. So that's one reason I like this approach. This may not be the newest version, so we may want to look at upgrading it from this one. But for our demo purposes, this will work just fine. Before we go and configure that, I do see down here in our worker that it did fail to download. And we can see here with this download error, what that looks like. And then of course it goes back to trying again, and it will do this in a loop. And we're just going to see this spinning in the UI. So that's why we're going to need that second proxy. And with that kind of shown, we can now just go ahead and stop the service while we finish up the rest of the configuration. Okay, so on the Tinyproxy side, one thing is that there is a service. So if we do systemctl and status, Tinyproxy, you will see here that there is a service that gets installed in this user lib systemd system directory. So you can use that service to run things. I'm just going to use the very simple command they put here with this tinyproxy-d, just so we can actually see the logs that it would generate through a connection. The config file, the tinyproxy.conf, is also under etc tinyproxy. And if we do a vi on tinyproxy.conf, we can see the contents of the default file. So to get this working, we don't need to make too many changes. And here at the top, I'm just going to change the user and group to my Cribl user, which is what I'm currently logged in as. For the port, I would like to use 9066 for this one. So we're just going to change that listener port. Now I don't need to change the listener bind address. If I wanted to set it to a specific interface, I could. Otherwise, it's going to listen across all interfaces. And then I'm just going to go down here to that allow section. And we're just going to comment both of these out because I want to allow just unrestricted access, any IPs. Otherwise, you could certainly set that one. And because I don't have a further upstream proxy, I don't need to set this upstream value. But here it does show a very simple config line of how you could pull that off. And that's really it. Just with the allow list kind of updated, my user and my port, this is pretty much ready to go. So we're just going to save that. And of course, I didn't do a sudo first. So we're going to have to make those changes one more time. So Cribl. Again, I want to use 9066. And we can just page down here until we get to the allow statements and just comment those out. And then now to run it, we do tinyproxy and then just -d. I could tell it which config file to use with the -c option, but by default, it will use that tinyproxy.conf that it already has. And so here we see that it's trying to listen, is listening, and it's not running as root, so it's not going to bother changing the UID or group, and it is ready to accept connections. And likewise here from our worker node, we can run a similar test as we did before. This time here with our netcat, applying it to port 9066 and changing the proxy type over to HTTP. And now here we both see on this side that it was successful, and we see that there was no upstream proxy for reaching our intended endpoint. It received a connect from this location, and it's doing a connect up to the cloud as its connect and then the request. Since this doesn't really return anything, it then closed the connection, but that shows that this is now working as we would expect. So our next step again is to go and update our process, our worker here, to use the other environment variables for the other proxy. So these ones are the HTTP proxy and HTTPS proxy variables. And we see that both of them get set with just HTTP:. We don't set it with an S for the secure one. So pretty much the same configuration for both lines here. And again, here 9066 is our port instead of 9065. So with that, we can just go ahead and save this. And now we can start our process. And let's go back over here to our workers list. Again, we'll see first that it's not there. And then we'll start this here. And it's usually pretty quick at applying the config bundle, so we'll see if we can catch it. Before it does. It looks like we missed it because it said it finished refreshing the package, and now it's reloading it. But that's okay. We can push another change and show that. We can also see here that it did connect to port 4200 over the HTTP protocol to go and fetch that file. And here as well with the bundle over port 443. So we see that traffic that it's trying, and it was able to establish the connection to this host to be able to retrieve that file. So over here, when we do a refresh, right, everything now looks good and current. We have our node is up and alive. The config version was updated. It's no longer spinning. But as one last little just test here, let's go ahead and just push one more config version change. So I'm just going to go into my worker group and into a pipeline. And I'm just going to re-enable this guy here. And we're going to just push that change. And then already over here, we can see that same thing. And let's scroll back up because that moves rather quick. Where the leader did trigger that configure again. And then it almost immediately was able to download that config bundle. And now then it goes to decrypting, creating the backup, etc., to actually apply it. So where it got stuck before, that very quickly now solved that problem and was able to fetch its package. And if we go back over just to our workers list, we can see again, right, that did update to this C922, where it was a different value earlier. So I hope that helps to demonstrate how you can set up these proxy items in order to allow a worker node who doesn't normally have access to the internet to proxy through another machine. If you are doing a use case such as having an edge node and your proxy would be your worker node, then just keep in mind on the resource consumption in case it needs additional CPU, memory, possibly even its own networking interface. And likely as well, if you're going to set this up on a few of them, you would want to connect it with a host name, of like a VIP or a VIP on your load balancer in order to have it point at one and be able to go through one of maybe many proxy endpoints. So this can scale in many ways, but at its very basic, this is how we can set up a very simple web proxy and a very simple SOCKS proxy to resolve this challenging networking environment. So I hope that was useful, and have a great night. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Randy. If you want to learn more, you might want to look at our documentation at docs.cribl.io, or take a sandbox for a spin at sandbox.cribl.io. And last, please be a part of the community at community.cribl.io. As always, thank you for watching.